Welcome back for the next video. So in the last video we explained what an API was and the big picture, and then we explained the two tools, one of the two tools that you're going to need in order for us to test our endpoints as we develop them. And so in order to proceed further, we're going to have to define a project in order to create posts, because we're going to be posting information to a mock database, and we need to create these mock tables with this information that we're going to be posting. And so the project that we have before us is we're going to build a RESTful API. And I will, in a future lesson, go into more detail about what the RESTful paradigm is. Just know that it's industry standard and it defines an approach to building APIs. And in this API that we're going to build together, we're going to have two tables. We're going to have a lessons table and a channels table. And then a channel is a group. Think of it like a group chat channel, like a Slack or a Discord channel that brings together an instructor and a group of students from the same cohort as they work on a lesson. So a channel, so we have here the fields that we're going to have in our channel table. Our channel table is going to have a unique ID for each channel, and then each channel will have a name. And then within that, we will have the lesson ID in the channel, and then the cohort that's going through, what cohort is going through. So imagine a school and they teach web development, and the school starts out with a cohort. Maybe they name that first cohort Web Dev 1. And Web Dev 1 moves on and they start lessons, and then they go to the next lesson and the next lesson. And then another cohort starts, Web Dev 2, and then they're going to start in on the lesson 1 and then proceed in order on through. And so we're going to be creating a table that's going to be creating these channels and then these lessons. A lesson has an ID for every lesson, and it has a name of the lesson. Now, one real quick thing. Later on in the lessons, I will be teaching you how to set up a back-end true, database that will store this information. Right now, the task before us is really just to learn how to do the CRUD operations, the post, the delete, the update, and the read. And so we will get to how to set up a backend database in later lessons. For right now, we're going to create an array for this table and an array for this table. So, and I'll explain a little bit more about that later. And so the first thing we're going to do in this video is we're going to create an endpoint. We're going to create a channel. We're going to create a channel. We're going to create an endpoint. So we're going to create an endpoint here that when you go to this endpoint, we're going to do a server.post to that endpoint, and then this is the task before us in this video. We're going to add a post to this endpoint, and we're going to be sending some information to the server in the form of a JSON object, and we're going to attach that information in the body of the request object. If you recall, the request object is this object that we send to the endpoint. This is the information that we send with the request, and then this is the information that gets sent back. Both of these are objects, and this object we can put some information in this object that we want to send on to the endpoint. And so we're going to be doing this in this video right now. So let's go back. Let me just step back also once real quick about, in the first video we set up nodemon. That's so every time we make a change to our code that then we don't have to constantly stop and then restart our server. It automatically will restart. well, you know what? I added NodeMon to the regular dependencies, but we really don't want to add it to the regular dependencies. We want to add it to the dev dependencies. So I'm not going to uninstall this and reinstall it as a dev dependency, but I just want to call it to your attention. Normally, when you install something as a dev dependency, you would do a yarn add or an npm install with a -d, and then that'll create a new section here called dev, meaning development dependencies. And what it is development dependencies. When you finally publish your application or your backend, the development dependencies won't get pushed up, and any libraries that are used for development aren't going to be included in the final product. So I just wanted to bring up that real quick. So, as I said, we are going to be pretending that we're going to write to a real backend database. Hopefully, as front-end developers, you're familiar with the fetch and the Axios. Well, actually, you will have used, hopefully, Axios library as front-end web developers. So in React or Vue or Angular or whatever, you can use the Axios library, and you will have done axios.post, axios.get, axios.delete, and such. And so that we were able to send information, and it went off to a backend API, and it stored that information. Well, now we're going to be creating that backend API, but we're going to be pretending that we're going to set up a backend database. So let's just build or add the two tables, the fake tables. In real life, this would be a real database, but let's just create our tables. Let's create a table called channels, and that's going to be an empty array for our purposes. And let's create another one called lessons, and that'll also be an array. And later on, like I said, we will make these true living database tables, and we will show you how to. I will show you how to push information up to that. Okay, so how do we do a post? Well, it's pretty easy. Express gives us another very intuitive verb, server.post, and that's how we send information. And in that, we give it the endpoint or the URL that when the user types the HTTP localhost 5000 / and then let's go look at the README and see exactly, it's this endpoint right here. So let me just copy this right here, Control C. So when the user puts this in, then we are going to, of course, include the homies, as I was taught to call them. Kind of they always go together, and and so basically now we need to be able to, when we go to this endpoint, we're going to attach some information to this rec object. This is an object that contains information, and we attach to, so one of the objects that we can attach information to, one of the most common ways, one of the ways a client can send information is on the body of the rec object. So, so what we'll do is we'll create a constant, and we will call it channel info, and we'll make it equal to the rec.body. Okay, so basically what we're doing is we're going to have some information that we're going to stick in this thing, and we're going to assign that to this variable. So then the deal is how do we put information in here? How do we get information on the rec.body? And so if you go to either Postman or Insomnia, I'm using Insomnia for right now. And right now we did a get in our last couple lessons. So now let's do a new one. Let's do a new request, and we're going to make this a post. And change this to post. Create. So, as I said, how do we get information in this rec.body so that we can send it? Well, when we make our post to, and let's copy the URL, paste it right here, and let's copy the rest of this, because this is where we're going to send our post. We're going to send it right there. Oh, we don't need both of those slashes. So when we're sending, so when we go to this URL, we're going to be sending a post. And we stick information on the body by choosing in our tool here, Postman or Insomnia, the body, and it's going to be attaching to it a JSON. And in here, we're going to be describing the JSON. And so what information in our README are we having to send to the channel? We need a unique ID, a name, a lesson ID, and a cohort. So, because we're mocking a database table, so normally when you add information to a real backend database, the ID fields are automatically applied for you. You don't have to specify them in the rec.body. You don't have to specify them in here. They automatically get added. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a JSON with these 3 objects, and then we're going to do a little code thing in order to emulate the automatic generation of this ID. That might sound confusing, but it'll become clear as we code along. So let me see, name, lesson ID, and cohort. So if I go back this way, so if I go back here, so I got to add a name, and let's give the name, what do we want to name it? We're going to say, we'll call this, the name of this channel, Node Intro. And then we're going to give it a lesson ID. Oops. We'll just call it lesson ID 1. And then we're going to give it a cohort. And so what would be kind of a standard name for a cohort? A cohort, like web dev cohort 3. So we'll just say web dev 3. Whatever you can imagine that cohort names would be. A little thing, just a little information about a JSON. A JSON is JavaScript object notation. It's comprised of key value pairs. The keys have to be enclosed in double quotes. Single quotes will not work. Then you put the colon outside of the quote, and then any string or any information needs to also be enclosed in double quotes, but like integers or arrays or objects, they can not have to have the double quotes. So this is how we create the body of the rec object. When we're making this post, we create an object, and here we're kind of hand putting in the object. Normally the object would be created somewhere else. It would come from like a form that the client, let's say the client has a form on the front end, and the form pulls in information. It'll prompt the user for a name, a lesson ID, or a cohort, and then the form puts it into a JSON format, and then when it hits it, it'll send it to this endpoint as a post. But since we don't have a front-end client that we're using in order to capture the information, that's why we use these tools, Postman and Insomnia, to take the place of what a client would normally do by sending this information. So we have these 3 things, and then we talked about this thing right here. So an ID is normally automatically added to a true database automatically. So for our purposes, I'm going to include a library that will auto-generate or make up an ID. And yarn add short ID. And that's a little package that will, if I look at package.json, so it did get added. And short ID, so now because we added it, we have to require it. Const short ID equals require short ID. Okay, so now now we can go back down here to our post. So we have a rec.body, and it's shaped with the information that we need to send. And we have this short ID library. So now we need to add a unique ID to this JSON object here, so the JSON object can be complete. And so in order to do that, we would say channel info dot ID. That's how we add a new how do we add a new key value pair to an object? We just use the dot notation, right? So channel info dot ID, this adds an ID to this, equals short ID dot generate, and that will add, and this will automatically generate a unique ID, and it'll add it to this rec.body right here. So it'll add another field called ID, and that'll be our channel ID. And then after that, how do we? So normally, like I said, if we're going to add this information to a true backend, database, then the database will give us the instructions on what code we are to enter in order to add data to a database. Sometimes it's the database name. Let's say the database is called DB. There might be a method called db.add, and then that would add the information, or db.delete, and that would delete information. But since we don't have a true backend database table, we're using this array. We're just going to go channel.push. That's how we add to an array, right? Channel.push channel info. So now we're going to push into this array right up here, this channel info and so normally before you do this push, once again in a true complete post operation, you would validate the information and make sure that it's good and it's right before you push. But here we're going to assume that the information is the way we want it. We were able to manipulate it and make it exactly the way we want it right here. And so after that, after we push, then the post should return a response. So now we're going to use this object here. We're going to assume that here's the rec object, and we create an ID, and now we take the rec object and we push it into the API, and now we're going to return a response back. So if it is successful, we'll return a status 201. Later on, I'll make this a little bit more bulletproof about how if it's not successful, then we want to return an error code and everything back. But right now, we'll make this nice and simple, and we'll tag on along to the end of the status code a JSON channel info. And this looks good. This should work. We're going to push to this. We created a body object here, and as soon as we hit send, it should work. So let's go ahead and try it. Oh, we forgot to start our server. Yarn server. There we go. Let's spin that up. And let's do a basic get first on these things and just make sure that we get a hello world or a future senior software developer. Let's go to get. And let's just do a send. Boom, we get our hello world. And let's go to that hello endpoint we wrote, hello. And we should get hello stuff. Good, so server's up and running, and Insomnia seems to be working fine. So let's go to the post endpoint, and now we have this object that we're going to send, and let's go ahead and hit send. And boom, we say we cannot post API channels. And so it seems like an error, and why? Why would it fail? There's a very good reason why. Two reasons, actually. One, I named my array channels, and I said channel right here. So let me do channels. Let me save that. Let me try it again. So I get this different error. Cannot set property ID of undefined. So what does that mean? What's that all about? Well, Express is cool. Express abstracts away a lot of the complexity of just the raw node way of doing this. But Express does not know how to parse a JSON object, and so Express has a built-in additional methods that we can call upon that will teach it how to parse a JSON object. They don't automatically install it when we require it and set the server equal to Express. We have to sort of ask for these extra methods if we need them. And so the method that we need in order to teach Express how to parse a JSON object is we need to say we need to say server.use express.json. And what this is Express. The Express package has this little JSON method that when we tell the server to use it, it will teach Express how to parse a JSON object. So let me save that. And so now if we go to Insomnia and hit send, boom, it works. And so you see the information right here was absolutely posted. Boom, boom, boom. And you see our unique ID we got added. And so that is a successful post. Now, let's make another post, and this time I want to show you how to do it in Postman, because Postman, there's a couple little different things. So let me copy this, Control C, and now let me go to Postman. And Postman looks a little different than Insomnia. So to make a new request with Postman, or you click that plus right there, and right now, then I change here. I'm going to make it. Matter of fact, you know what? Let's just test our get endpoints first. Let's get rid of this and get and hit send, and then we get our hello world. And let's just test our hello, hit send, and we get that. Excellent. Now we want to test that post. So in Insomnia, you click the down arrow and you click post. And it's a little bit different here than in Insomnia. So in here, in order to create our JSON object, you notice that, remember in here we had to create this object. Matter of fact, let me copy this object. We're going to change it a little bit because we don't want to enter two of these. In the endpoint, API/channels. We're going to make this, we're hitting API/channels. And so in order to make this a post, we have to click on body, just like we did over in Insomnia. But this is one thing that's really important, and a lot of people will kind of stumble upon this. I know I myself did, is you have to make it body, then raw, and then text JSON. So this raw step is the extra thing that Postman makes you do, where with Insomnia, you could just click on body, and make it instantly JSON. But with Postman, you have to click on body, raw, JSON. And so now we get to create our JSON object. Let's go copy it again. Control C. Let's stick it right in here. And now let's create another class, or another channel. Let's say node intermediate. Node intermediate. The cohort still web dev 3. Now they've moved on. Let's just say they're in, lesson ID. Well, it's a new one, so lesson ID 1, and everything should work fine again because our code has, once again, we're going to be hitting this endpoint. We have the rec.body, which we did in Postman. It's going to auto-generate a new ID, and we're going to push, and then we're going to get the status code back. So let's go back and let's try this, and the information that we get back, here, let me slide this up, will come back post. And boom, there we go. There's our new information. We have a new channel, and see another new unique ID here. So let me just go back to our code. Man, I get lost where I'm at. So basically, that is how you do a post. In the next video, we're going to actually be doing some gets on the information that we put up here. We did basic cheesy easy gets right here. We're going to do more of a real get. We're going to do get against this information here. We're going to stick some information, more information in here, and then we're going to do some gets. Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed this lesson, and I look forward to seeing you in the next lesson. All right.